Organizing my windows. Hello, people are saying hello. I can't actually see the stream yet. Oh, dropped frames detected. On which one? Oh, on Mixer. Of course it is. Oh, I know why. It's because it's China stream.
Ooh, I just got a notification. What's this?
Oh, there we go. Should be fine now. Mixer, why are you dropping frame? So can people on Mixer see us? We're live on YouTube.
I'm not even seeing the stream on Mixer.
Yeah, me neither. Hello everyone on YouTube. YouTube's working fine as it normally does. If you can see us on Mixer, say I can see you on Mixer. This is why I don't like Mixer, because it just doesn't work.
It's a good reason not to like something.
What is?
I'm looking a little orangey there, Zach.
I've sorted. Listen, it's just because I'm really white.
Okay.
There's nothing I can do about it.
No,
Why is this not working? Am I streaming to like the wrong? I don't know why this wouldn't be working.
People are saying hello.
Yeah, I don't know if they're saying hello to me or Jez though.
But yeah, I'm still not seeing anything on Mixer.
Let's change servers. Stream to London instead of the EU. And with any luck, that seems to not be dropping frames. Okay, we're live now, Mixer.
Oh, yeah.
Here we go. Hello on Mixer. If you can see us on Mixer, please say we can see you on Mixer, because I need that feedback.
My audio is bad.
Yeah, your mic does sound slightly not good.
It's probably not on the right mic, so let me see if I can figure that out.
Okay, they can see us on Mixer now. Thank goodness. How's our audio levels? Am I loud? Are me and Dan on like the same level, or is one of us too loud and the other too quiet?
Now my microphone should be
there you go. Now you sound rich. Now you sound great. Right, I'm going to pop out the chat. So we'll start in just a second, everybody. Sorry about this. I wasn't expecting Mixer to not work. I don't know why. It never works first time. Let's cut those off. Cut that off. Move you over there. Right, I am... Oh, and voice recorder, of course.
Sorry, folks. I'm on a new computer, so I have to reset up everything.
Yeah, me too.
Where is the
testing
microphone?
1, 2, 3. Yeah, me too. Testing. You see that? My mic's not even set properly in the recorder. How do I do chat? How do I change that? Okay, there we go. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. There we go. Great. All right, I'm ready to go when you are.
You just like test my testing 1, 2, 3. Are these tabs working? I know you guys can hear it as is for me. I'm recording. All right, we seem to be okay. All right.
You do sound a bit muffly, actually, for some reason.
Muffly.
Yeah.
Is it better now?
A little bit. Oh, it'll do.
All right, just let me. Did I close the tweet? Seriously, Dan?
Did you really? Did you really, Dad?
It's fine because I had it on WordPad, so I can just copy paste.
Nice. Also, if you have Cloud Clipboard enabled, just
I haven't. All right, tweet a sense.
Okay.
I didn't mention you.
Of course you didn't. Right, I'm ready when you are.
All right, I am. Oh, what episode is this?
146.
I guess I'm not completely ready. 146.
I just started recording. Okay, stop that.
Sorry. Almost ready. Okay, I am now recording.
I am now recording.
All right, 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 146 for August 23rd, 2019. Hey everyone, Dan Rubino here, joined with Zach Bowden for another exciting episode of the Windows Central Podcast. This week we'll be talking, of course, new builds. I'm actually finally running the fast ring build myself, so I did come through on that. But Zach will tell us what's new and going on with the Windows 10 releases for fast and slow ring going on there. Also, Microsoft Edge Beta is finally now available. So we've been talking about Canary in developer branches for a while for the new Chromium-based Edge, and now the beta version is out. We'll explain what that means in relation to Canary and Dev. Do you need to run it? How that whole thing works? Let's talk a little bit about the glass thermostat losing Cortana, which I'm actually kind of upset about, and I should write something about that. And my voice apparently is already going. We'll also talk about the Galaxy Note 10, of course, because when Samsung releases a phone, the whole world notices, even if yours truly doesn't really care for Samsung that much. We'll also talk about some just general tech stuff. I'm testing the new Fossil Gen 5 smartwatch, and I just want to talk a little bit about smartwatches in general and wearables, because I'm still not completely happy with these where they are in 2019. I also did get a new Lenovo ThinkVision portable display, and that's really kind of blown me away. I've only had it for a few hours, but I'm already prepared to call it the best portable display if you don't need touch, which I don't think many people do, but I'll explain why I think it is as a preview to my review, which will be come out next week. Let's talk about a little bit about portable displays, and I guess we can relate it to the Galaxy Note 10, since, as many of you know, you can plug in phones to these things and make it work like a computer, kind of. I don't know. It's a thing. Zach, how are you doing on this fine Friday?
I'm not too bad. I'm just getting used to my new Note 10 that arrived yesterday. It's my first Note device ever. I've had Samsung devices in the past and basically hated all of them. So this is definitely going to be an interesting time. We'll talk a little bit about it later in the show. How are you anyway?
I'm doing well. August is finally winding down, which means the weather's cooling down finally. Summer's almost over. A little bit upset. I actually kind of like having daylight, but fall's such a great month anyway. But you and I are gearing up for IFA,
Yes.
which we leave for next Sunday, even though it doesn't start for, I think, a few days later.
Yeah.
I'm always confused by these shows. I always don't pay attention to when the actual show happens, and just know we fly in very early. But we'll be in Berlin. We should be able to do a podcast too. I think in Berlin.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah.
For our internet is good enough, but we'll see about doing that and talk about all the stuff that's going on there. If you don't know what IFA is, think of it as CES. It's basically Europe's big trade show for laptops, computers, as well as smartphones. You get a lot of big announcements going on there. So it's definitely a fun show, and I love that city. Have you been to Berlin before?
I've never been to Berlin, no. It's
Cool.
the first time for me.
Well, our diet will be strictly beer and sausage and sauerkraut, and it's going to be marvelous.
Indeed.
All right, let's go to these new builds, though, and tell us what happened this week and the Windows Insiders.
Yeah, so
program.
we're going to be talking about quite a few builds, actually, because we didn't do a show last week, so we missed out on a 20H1 build for last week, as well as this week's builds. We'll start with 19H2, however, build 18362.10.0.15 and 10.0.0.14 rolled out to the slow ring. Microsoft is still doing this this 2 updates for slow ring insiders thing, where one build doesn't have all the features on and the other build does have all the features on. Microsoft has been rolling out these slow ring builds that basically backport 20H1 features. So far, we've seen the notification improvements come to 19H2. We've seen the new Windows search features in the File Explorer come to 19H2 now as well. We've also seen the calendar flyout, being able to add things directly to your calendar through the calendar flyout on the taskbar. That's in 19H2 now. All of these features were 20H1 features originally, but have been backported, which is very interesting because I wasn't expecting to see any sort of surface level features for 19H2, but now there's actually quite a few in there. Quite a few, I wouldn't call them features, but more like just user experience changes and improvements here and there that just make things a little bit better. But otherwise, still nothing huge for 19H2. These updates are rolling out to the slow ring. Like I said, I don't know I'm guessing it's a 50-50 split between which insiders get what, and it depends each time. If your last build had features on, your next build could have features off, which is very frustrating. But that does appear to be how it's working. Although you can always just air quotes sideload or just manually install the build that has all the features on if you really want to. That's what I've been doing, because who doesn't want features in a build? I want the features on. Now I am curious how they're going to deliver this when it's ready. Are they going to have the features off by default to everyone and then just like turn them on at will, or will they be on by default when it rolls out to the public? Microsoft hasn't detailed their plans regarding the rollout, unfortunately. But that's basically it for 19H2. I'm actually running the 19H2 builds on my main machine. I know, Dan, you've updated to the 20H1 builds. You've skipped ahead, as they would call it.
Yeah, I got a little impatient. I put this, so I'm running, and I will be reviewing it because it's outstanding, this new HP Omen desktop. And some of you have been following me on Instagram know it's got a Core i9 2080 Ti. It's ridiculous. But I put slow ring on it, and I was like, click, check for updates. Nothing. Check for updates. Nothing. And I waited about 10 minutes. I'm like, all right, fast ring it is. And put fast ring on it, and it just and fast ring build came out right away. I've noticed this where I've tried this on another laptop too, and it was the same thing. It was like no slow ring. It just wasn't coming down. So I was like, all right, fine, fast ring. I will say, and I've been promising people I'll talk about this, I've had zero issues with it. I just sounded like Woody Allen there when I said that. But I've had zero issues running this. Now, my workflow is pretty specific too, so I haven't tested everything. But like, I haven't gotten blue screens of death or driver failures or, no resume issues. This is both desktop and laptop. So, granted, this is new modern hardware, so I don't know if you have a 5-year-old laptop, but it honestly doesn't really feel very different, although I do have that new Cortana experience, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, how is that? Because I've sort of played about with it on my Insider machine, but that's not logged into my actual personal account, so I don't really use it much. How is it for you?
Yeah, I mean, so the chat dialogue is the coolest thing, and I think it looks nicer. It just looks a little bit more modern. It has the black background again. Although you go to settings, it's a white background again, so there's some inconsistency there.
Microsoft design for you.
Yeah, and I don't think it says they tell you it's a beta and here's what it can do now. In other words, they're kind of like setting up like, listen, not everything is here yet, but this is what you got. So for instance, I don't think I can tell it to put my computer to sleep or lock the PC, right, which is what regular Cortana could do. So that's kind of missing. But the integration is kind of cool. So, and you saw this screenshot last night where I asked Cortana to remind me of a meeting I have Monday. And although I didn't precisely give the right information, it did send it to my Microsoft To Do. And it was cool because like it put the link in graphics in there for Microsoft To Do showing where it went to. And like that's new, right? So you can see this tighter integration that's going on with Cortana and like other Microsoft services, which is what I'm really interested in seeing. But it doesn't feel radically different. Let me hit the button now, see what happens. Yeah, I just cleared it. Yeah, it she goes to voice by default, which is kind of interesting.
I'm assuming that's because it's not done yet. I assume you'll be able to change that when it's done, as in like you can say it to automatically start listening or just to.
Right, and that's how it works on the Android right now, which is kind of cool.
I would prefer. I don't really talk to Cortana. I just type. And
as we saw last night, she didn't get my meeting completely right. She put the reminder for today to remind me when she should be reminding me Monday. So luckily I was able to go into To Do, which now has all these scheduling and reminder stuff in there. So I was able to just quickly fix it. But it's kind of neat because you see, even with the voice chat stuff, like it's like chat bubbles going back and forth, just like a text message system. Mm-hmm. So you get a visual history sort of your conversation, which I thought is kind of neat. So But that's really all I've noticed.
Yeah, like 20H1, there really isn't much going. I mean, you should have the new notification stuff as well, but they're minor changes where like there's now a link in the top right of the notification action center to manage notifications and stuff, and there's sort of just like quality of life improvements to some of the settings areas where there's now images for some options and whatnot. It is so far pretty minor, so hopefully that changes in the near future. But
There's also, I think it's new with this build. I always keep mixing up 20H1 with 19H2, but the microphone that shows when one of your apps is recording using a microphone now shows in a
I believe
taskbar.
that was an 1809 thing.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, I think that was last year. Yeah, that's not new because Microsoft has started focusing a lot on privacy stuff, as Microsoft does, and that's one of those things along with location. Like if an app's using your location, you'll see it show up in the system tray as well now, and you can like click on it to go in and disable access if you don't want an app using the location or microphone or camera, for example, which is kind of nice.
And you can finally install DTS Sound Unbound, an app that we've seen in the store for like a year, just sitting there as a placeholder. I actually did install it. It's just like the Dolby one where it's like you installed it. If you want to use it, you got to pay $10, which I did. Which reminds me, I got to do my invoice today because I'm not actually going to pay for that. I haven't actually figured out what it does. There's like plugins for DTS Headphone X and DTS X. Okay. Please buy, but yeah, I got to figure this out how this works. I don't know.
I've never heard of this app until right now. So.
Oh, really? So DTS is just like Dolby, but they're different codecs and flavors of doing immersive surround sound. Back when I was a projectionist, we used to have movies come in. They were either DTS or they were Dolby Digital, and audiophile nerds have their preference about which one's better and which one's worse and all this kind of stuff. But the idea is it's a major brand. When you buy like one of these receivers like that I have downstairs, they're usually DTS and or Dolby, just like you have Dolby Vision and HDR10, which are competing for visual space. Mm-hmm. So I'm actually pretty happy with Dolby's solution. I've never really heard it, but I'm not an audiophile, right? But for people who have DTS enabled systems or speakers, you can now like plug Windows into that and it'll leverage those codecs. So it's actually kind of a big deal if you're really into audio. And it's always good that Microsoft is working with companies to ensure compatibility. But we haven't been able to install it until I think the 20H1 build. So it's kind of interesting.
Nice. All right, so moving on to the actual new features in the last two builds that we haven't covered. Build 18963 rolled out last week, and there was actually quite a few changes in this build, which was nice to see. Starting with the Task Manager, you can now see your GPU temperature directly from within Task Manager, and I believe that follows up with being able to see the CPU temperature. I think that was added in a previous build as well. So that's good. So if you are, playing a game or something and you want to see how your GPU is performing temperature-wise, you can now see that. Which is great. It's only for dedicated GPUs, so it won't measure integrated graphics, but then again, who wants to measure that anyway? Also, virtual desktops can now be renamed and are saved across reboots. This is something we sort of got to check out a few weeks ago when that internal build leaked and stuff. But you can now rename virtual desktops, if you're a virtual desktop user, of course. Not everybody is. I know I'm not. I've tried to fit virtual desktops into my workflow, and I can't do it because I always forget that I have virtual desktops. I'm like, where's that window? I've just opened a new window on this desktop. And then I realized later that I actually had it running on a different virtual desktop. So, yeah, you can now rename them.
I'm still in the never run virtual desktop.
Yeah, it is. It's world. Difficult. I'm guessing this is like a superpower user feature. It's like for developers, I guess. People building apps and whatnot. One desktop is for like app builds and the other one's for
conceptually it makes like I hear I'm like, that's smart. But my workflow, it's even when I swapped from 3 monitors down to just 1, which is what I'm using now, I still never went to it. It's like the track point systems, the little nubs on. It's like some people just really love that and other people are like me and you are befuddled by it.
It's because you can't see the other desktops. I'm just, my memory's so bad I forget that I had those windows running on the other desktops. But yeah, you can now rename them. So for example, if you are a virtual desktop user, you can have one desktop for, say, productivity apps, so Office and whatever else that's under productivity. Then you can have another one for creativity, which has things like Photoshop and whatever. Another one for gaming, which has all your gaming apps and stuff running. So you can customize them in any which way you like, and they save across reboots, which is a big deal. So now if you restart your PC and boot back up, all those apps that you open up again will actually launch in its corresponding virtual desktop that it was last running in, which is super nice to see. There's also been updates to the settings app. Microsoft with 20H1 has actually, I've noticed this, they've been doing a lot to port over lots of control panel elements to the settings app. They've also improved the optional features area in the new settings app. So the turn Windows features on and off menu or window, which is a legacy control panel applet, while it's still there, they are making the modern version of that a bit more capable now and a lot more cleaner to use and stuff. You can now multi-select different features you want to install and turn on and off and stuff. And I'm guessing this will eventually replace the legacy turn features on and off window as well. They've also finally added mouse cursor speed to settings. This is another legacy control panel element that's now in the settings app. Every day, I still get people on Twitter going, why is the old control panel still in Windows 10? And it's because this is not an overnight thing. The control panel is old and large, and you don't just copy-paste functions from one to the other and have them work from day one. This has been 4 years going now, and Microsoft isn't, they're still not done, and I don't think they will be done for quite a while. I assume the reason they've actually ramped up this progress with 20H1 is because of the Windows Core stuff, which is up and coming, because that won't have legacy control panel at all. So they need to get all the sort of the core stuff into the settings app ASAP. This is a big one, or to some people. Notepad is now store updatable. This is the one that lots of people on Twitter were like, "Oh my god, this is great," or "This is terrible," or "Why it doesn't make sense." But yes, Notepad is now a Microsoft Store application. It's an MSIX app, I believe, that can be updated through the Microsoft Store. Now, a lot of people have been saying why it doesn't. Notepad isn't exactly an app that needs to be updated all the time. In fact, a lot of people would rather that Microsoft leave Notepad alone and stop updating it. But I'm guessing the reason for this is once again Windows Lite / the Windows Core OS stuff.
So they can pull stuff out.
Yeah,
right?
so they can pull. So Windows Lite or the Windows Core OS images can be as lightweight as possible. And if you want these additional apps, you can go into the Microsoft Store and download them, such as Notepad or WordPad in the future or Paint.
I was gonna say, it's always like, I don't know. I find the Notepad people funny because I'm like, Notepad, I'm Team WordPad, baby. Like, WordPad is just like the best of Word and Notepad. It's like this nice, it's like a middle ground. I mean, that's how I use the app and think of the app. I'm curious if other people think of it that way. But there's some really good now UWP Notepad apps anyway on the store that I think look better with acrylic. We've covered a few of them on Windows Central.
Yeah,
so.
it's actually weird to me how Notepad wasn't one of those apps that they updated for the modern platform. Because when Windows 8 first came out, they had a bunch of modern apps out of the box, and Notepad wasn't one of them. And Notepad's one of those sort of staple experiences that you expect to just be updated when Windows gets like a new platform like that. And it never happened. I assumed it would come eventually with Windows 8, and it didn't. And then Windows 10 rolled around, and I said, but now it makes sense to update it for the modern era, and they still didn't do it. So I don't know, maybe they'll just do a modern version for Windows Lite. I'm doubting it. I'm guessing the reason why this is in the store is so that they don't have to make a modern version and just say, hey, just go and download the classic one if you really want a Notepad experience. Also new in this build that we're still talking about, 18963, changes to your account picture in Windows. And this isn't like locally. This is more about the cloud stuff and how when you update your Microsoft account picture, that change is reflected across all Microsoft account devices and services like Office or Outlook Online or Xbox. Maybe not Xbox, but everywhere else it usually shows up. And this has been a frustrating experience for most of the time because when you update it in one area, it can take time for that to roll out. If you update it online, for example, your Windows device may see that update like in 24 hours or maybe never. Like one time it just didn't update for me. I had to manually do it, but now they're saying they're improving this by just making it faster, and that it would take a little while for this rollout to appear across all Microsoft services, but it is working in Windows now, so that's kind of nice.
Oh yeah, someone's asking about this new setting to reopen apps when restarting.
I'll get to that. That's coming up in the next build.
Right.
We're talking about 2 builds today, remember. Also, Windows search improvements. Microsoft has added sort of hints when you type things in, because Windows 10 search at least, hasn't been amazing. And when you type things in, sometimes it brings up completely irrelevant things or seemingly irrelevant. But now Windows search will sort of give you related text to why it thinks this is what it wants to display. And if you don't want that, then you can select the related text, and then it will go to the other thing as well. And they're also, interestingly enough, bringing the new search experience to 1809. which is kind of nice. And funny enough, because of this, it actually has Cortana at the bottom, whereas the version on 1903 and above doesn't have that. So technically 1809 has a better Cortana experience than 1903 right now. But that's that for that build. Then moving on to 18965, control over restarting apps at sign-in. Now, this is a feature that's been in Windows for Windows 10 for a little while now. I think at least 2 feature updates, maybe 3. And what it does is essentially it tries to copy what Mac OS can do, where when you restart or shut down your PC or Mac, a pop-up comes up saying, reopen the windows that I currently have open. And on Mac OS, it works almost flawlessly. When you boot up, all of your windows and apps are exactly where you left them and stuff, and it doesn't even look like they will ever shut down. But on Windows, it's been very clunky. More often than not for me, what happens is I'll hit the desktop and there'll be no apps open, and then slowly but surely, one by one, will open up again and reload. It's just a clunky experience.
You need more RAM.
Yeah, sure. So Microsoft says, we've heard feedback that some of you would prefer more explicit control over when Windows automatically restarts apps that were open when you restart your PC, and with 20H1 we're bringing that option to you. Windows now puts you in control with a new app restarting setting. When turned on, Windows automatically saves your restartable apps from signing out, restarting or shutting down Windows, and restarts them next time you sign in. This setting is off by default. It never used to be off by default. That's very interesting. Hang on, this doesn't even sound like they've updated it. Because this has been in Windows for a long time. I'm guessing they've rebranded it more than anything. Yeah, I'm hoping they've improved it a bit, because it was never great before. But that's what that is, basically. For those wondering what that feature is, it's when you restart your PC and, say, Edge or Spotify open up automatically. If you don't have them set to start up automatically, that is. That's what that feature is. And now you can turn it on and off and stuff, which is kind of nice. There's also some updates to the feedback hub, some sort of UI improvements. The search is now a bit better and stuff. And there's also more achievements. So if you're somebody who likes to hunt insider achievements, you can do that. I would be more inclined to hunt these achievements if they were Xbox Live achievements, but they're not, so I don't care. And that's basically it for 20H1 so far. So there is some stuff sort of creeping in here and there, but there's still no other than the Cortana stuff, there's still no blockbuster new features, in my opinion.
Yeah, I guess it's just, as we mentioned before, just some polish and, tweaking things here and there. They're obviously focused on Edge, which, will we talk about that next? Let's see, I closed the list here. Yeah, we'll talk about that next. So, but, yeah, I mean, it's more of a polishing kind of update. But in theory, and if our speculation is true and, and maybe October will be Windows Lite partially focused, and maybe they're working on some of that, and that's why we'll be rewarded by hearing about that. No guarantees though there for that, and we're still unsure if that's the actual game plan. I mean, eventually someday they have to talk about this thing, so it's just when and where that'll happen. Speaking of Edge beta is now available after people have leaked it in the past. So if you don't know, there's a bunch of different cadences here for the Edge browser. And I'm talking about the new Edge browser, the one that's based off of Chromium. So it's still not finalized. Microsoft started off with 2 types of build channels. One was called Dev for developer. The other one was Canary. Now, how that works is Canary are daily updates. So almost every day, at least every weekday, you'll get an update. Sometimes it actually breaks things. It's not usually tragic. I've never had it like the browser doesn't load at all or anything like that. But there have been instances where things will break, and then the next day they'll fix it. And usually this is where giving feedback is super important. You submit feedback to that team. Hopefully they'll get it and it'll be fixed. So you get a quick turnaround. But you also get the most cutting edge features, especially if you go into the about flags where you can usually find things. So that's Canary. That's for people in fast ring, people just like to live on the edge. It's what I use as my daily browser. I've never had any fatal flaws. I do install a backup browser just in case, but still, no problem. Then you have the developer branch. Developer branch comes out roughly, I believe it's every week or every 2 weeks. Yeah, it's every week.
Yeah, it's every week.
And what that is, it's not the latest Canary build, which is sort of a misconception how that works. It's actually the most stable of the Canary builds that they had released that previous week. So you may not be getting the latest one, but it's going to be the one that's the most stable, had the best feedback, and less issues. So that's the developer branch. But that even too may be still risky for your average user, in which case you get beta. So beta now is supposed to come out every 6 weeks. And how that works, again, it's not going to be necessarily the latest developer build. It's going to be kind of the most stable developer build. And it has something also to do with the latest, thing coming off of the Chromium open source project as well. But that one is nice because if you're really just unsure about these browsers and you want very stable, kind of boring, the beta build is going to be where it's at. That has all the best, newest features that are stable enough to roll out to people. Mm-hmm. So it's now available now. Still no word on ARM, though, even though, I'm running.
That's weird.
Yeah, I'm running the ARM version.
Yeah, because it leaks, right? It's like.
Yeah, and there's been ways for us to procure latest ARM builds. And it runs really well. I think there were some things broken, but they're obviously working on that. Probably not a huge priority, but the support is there. It runs. And honestly, it's like when you run that on a Windows Snapdragon 850 device, it's a really solid experience because people live in their browser so much, and it really makes up a difference for ARM. But I'm sure we'll hear more about that probably in the fall as that moves along. But I think Microsoft's more focused on getting this out for Mac, getting this out for Android, and as well as now PC. What are your thoughts about all this stuff?
Yeah, it's really nice. I like the idea of the beta channel because it's updated way less frequently than the other two. This is on a 6-week cadence, so you won't be bombarded with browser restarts. Although to be fair, Chromium's very good at updates. They're basically silent anyway. You don't really notice the browser when it's updating and stuff. But yeah, it's on a 6 weeks cadence compared to 1 week or daily, which is the Dev and Canary channels. And also, this is it's a big milestone for the Edge development process itself. It just means that we are one step closer to stable. Now, I did ask Microsoft, I asked them a couple of questions about what the plan is for Edge in this area and stuff. And I asked them about when they are sort of expecting Edge stable to be ready. And while they're not committing to any sort of firm window because they don't know, they do have personal hopes. And their personal hope is that Edge stable will be ready by the end of this year or early 2020, which is what we've been saying for a while. It makes sense. Hopefully in time for 20H1. In fact, we've already started seeing some work to Windows itself that's preparing itself for the switch from Edge UWP to Edge Win32. In fact, I believe this works on beta as well, but this week, you know how Edge beta leaked ages ago and you've been able to use the Edge beta channel for a while anyway? The Edge Stable channel is now online, and if you want to go and install Edge Stable, even though it's not official, you can do it. And although I'm calling it Edge Stable, these builds still aren't technically considered stable because Edge isn't done yet. But the stable channel is live, and Microsoft is flighting builds to the stable channel now. And that, when you install it, automatically removes Edge UWP from the start menu and the search, and everywhere where Edge UWP would sort of show up, it's gone now, and Edge Win32 replaces it, which is very interesting. But yeah, that's basically everything regarding Edge right now. In the Canary Ring, actually, Microsoft also announced that this week, the Collections feature that they announced at Build is now rolling out to Canary users.
Right, yeah.
Now, this is hidden under a flag. It's not enabled by default yet, but if you want to test it out, you can. Enabling it, it's basically, I think... I'm going to call this like the replacement for set tabs aside, because although Microsoft hasn't sort of said no, we're not bringing set tabs aside to the new Edge, they haven't said yes, we are bringing set tabs aside to the new Edge either.
Which is a feature Zach and I always were on that group that always hits it by accident.
Yeah, I hate set tabs aside, and people are, every time I say that, people go, "No, set tabs aside was the best feature in Edge." I'm like, you are insane. You are a crazy
conceptually.
person.
You see, again, conceptually for me, it's like the virtual desktops. Like I get it; it sounds like a good idea, but I just never found myself using.
If I did use it, I'd forget tabs are in there.
That's exactly totally. Happened. Yeah, I just would forget.
But collections, what it allows you to do is sort of collect elements of the web as you browse. So, for example, say I'm doing research on some medication or something like painkillers. What I can do is I can start doing that research online. I can go to Wikipedia or something. I can copy text and drag that into my collection called painkillers. I can drag images in. I can drag links in, and then I can refer to that later in a nice long list. And right now you can export that list to Excel of all Microsoft programs.
Really? That sounds very OneNote-ish.
Right, it's exactly. I immediately, when I saw that drop down, I was like, this is going to be export to OneNote, right? Nope, it's export to Excel. I'm guessing OneNote support will come later. But for now, it's export to Excel for some reason. But yeah, I'm not sure I'm going to use collections either. I mean, it's just not. It's not for me. These features are definitely very student sort of orientated, not for average users who just don't.
Yeah, I mean, it falls right in line with the whole productivity thing.
Oh yeah,
and,
definitely.
Mantra. And it does solve a problem with the web, which is sort of like, yeah, you hit a site like this is kind of cool, or something that, here's an article. I'm thinking about getting a car, but I'm not ready right now, but I like this article. So most people go and they bookmark, right? But bookmarks are just, I think a lot of people just have like a list of bookmarks. It's just like, some people, I'm sure, sort their bookmarks and create folders, and they're very meticulous. You are special people. But it's not quite, a way to organize things, I guess. Whereas having this sort of collections is a little bit more, especially if you can then export it and bring it to other Microsoft stuff. Like, yeah, hopefully OneNote or even To Do at some point will be kind of nice. So I conceptually, again, I have to enable it and give it a shot. What I've been using, especially the Edge Chromium thing for, is basically PWAs. Like, PWA experience on it is so good, because if you go to a lot of websites and you go to the menu and you go to apps, you'll see install this site as an app. And then it does it, and it pops it out. Like, you can do it right now on Mixer.com. And I've used it for a lot of Google services. I use Slack as a PWA now. I don't install the Slack from the store. I use the Twitter PWA. Again, I'm not using the one from the store, because the one from the store is based on Edge HTML for PWA. And yeah, there is a JavaScript performance difference between Chromium and original Edge. With Chromium, you get V8, which is it's a better performer. And like, even with Twitter, I get better scrolling. I get a better typing experience. And so I'm in just doing this. And this is where I really do get into the whole, like, and we've talked about this endlessly about the future of apps and everything. Like, for me, using PWA, it's like, I actually kind of like it better than sometimes installing apps. And the performance has definitely been, significantly better.
So I think, speaking of PWAs, I think Xbox is getting a Comedy Central app this week, and that's entirely web.
I did not know that. Oh yeah, they
I
lost
think Walking
an Apple years ago.
Yeah, I think Walking Cat spoiled it, but yeah, it's an entire PWA app, or it's a web app that is now it's for Xbox and I think Surface Hub for some reason. That's what the Microsoft Store says. But yeah, that's nice to see. In fact, a lot of the apps on Xbox are web apps. The YouTube app is a web app, for example. Which I don't think a lot of people realize. But yeah, it's web apps are already here. People just don't realize it. It's just, maybe it's not here on phones, but it's here on a lot of other platforms like TVs and desktop in some cases and whatnot.
Yeah, so just like as I was saying, if you're trying the new Edge browser, definitely install PWA. Just try it on your sites that you go to frequently, and then you can pin them to your taskbar for quick access, which is how I use them. And they look like little apps. I mean, you can't really tell here. It's like, I'm curious if other people experience this and they think the same thing, and I'm just not going crazy. But like, I've been using them like all over the place, and they run really well. I kind of like this idea. I like to see Microsoft do a little bit more with it. Obviously, with the integration with Windows 10, that was the whole point of putting them in the store, so they could take advantage of some Windows 10 features. But as is, this stuff is running pretty well.
Is your cat okay?
I have the door closed and she wants to get in, of course. So she'll hopefully fall asleep eventually. Yeah.
It's a loud cat. Anyway, whilst on the subject of Edge, I do want to briefly mention a couple more things that I asked Microsoft specifically. Regarding the new Edge on platforms like Xbox or HoloLens 2 or the Surface Hub 2, Microsoft isn't making any announcements around that, but they have said engineering work is underway in those departments. So that's good news. Windows Core OS will run it. Edge on Android and iOS. So obviously Edge on Android and iOS, it's already there, and those are the apps that are sticking around. There's not going to be like an entirely new Edge for Android and iOS, but Microsoft will be updating Edge for Android and iOS to sort of match the new Edge desktop where it makes sense. For example, the collections feature. That will get a mobile counterpart within Edge on Android and iOS, and they'll sync across devices and stuff. So wherever there's like an Edge desktop feature that sort of makes sense to have a mobile version, there will be updates on those platforms to bring that as well eventually, which is great news. Like, for example, this week, Microsoft enabled a whole bunch of more sync settings in Edge desktop. Let me actually pull it up here. You can now sync, in addition to favorites, you can sync your settings, addresses, phone numbers, and passwords. Passwords is the big one that I've been waiting for, because having to type in your password in every new PC is a nightmare. But now Edge syncs them across devices, which is amazing. And that now also works on the Edge Android and iOS ones as well. If you have Edge Insider Sync set up, you can now sync your passwords to your phone as well. So this sort of Edge ecosystem is coming online slowly but surely. And finally, I asked Microsoft about Edge on Windows 7, because Windows 7 is coming out with support early next year, I believe it is, January 2020. And I simply asked them, hey, are you going to continue supporting Edge on Windows 7 after the end of support date? And Microsoft was on a firm yes. We will continue supporting Edge for all users on Windows 7 even after end of support. Which,
if you think about it too, it's actually really smart, this whole process, because they can end support for Windows 7, which is a lot of work anyways to maintain that, the drivers and, sending out updates, testing on all these machines. But if you fundamentally think about what probably a lot of people are using on Windows 7, it's going to be a web browser. And so if you can't update and keep the whole OS update, you can at least keep that browser up to date as an experience for people with all the latest security features. And, that doesn't solve all the problems, but it's better than nothing for an OS you've already determined is end of life anyway. You're not giving support. So I think it's actually kind of a smart way, because if they just stuck with, IE obviously is discontinued support. They can't control the people's browsers and all this kind of stuff, but they can still make Windows 7 sort of give it a little bit more life, because you do get some features with the new Edge that syncs up with your Microsoft accounts and syncs across devices. So they still get to bring that stuff to Windows 7 users, even though, Zach and I will still give all our pity in the world if you're still on Windows 7. But
yeah.
It's like, come on, guys.
It's so old, Windows. I went back to Windows 7 the other day. It's so old and just it's so classic. It's like a classic OS. It's like going back to Windows 2000. Going back from Windows 10 to Windows 7 is the same as going back from Windows 10 to Windows 2000. There's no difference. It's exactly the same. Trust me.
Someone's asking, does LastPass work in Edge? It should. So there's actually two plugin systems right now for the new Edge. I mean, it's the same technology, but there's the official store from Microsoft, and these are actually kind of cool. These are all the same plugins that you get on Chrome. These are just been basically validated by Microsoft that they work well, they don't have bugs, and they should be okay. And you're getting plugins that basically are verified, because this is an issue on the Chrome store where people have installed like ad blockers, and it turns out they're like fake ad blockers, or they actually block stuff, but they track you on other things. And like there's been some of these high profile ones. So that's the problem with the Chrome store. So that's why it's best, if you can, on first blush, install it from the Microsoft thing. But the new Edge browser absolutely allows you to install plugins and extensions. I should call them extensions from the official Chrome store. You have to enable if you go to the Chrome store, it's like, hey, we can't install this now, but you hit this button, you can enable it, and then you can install anything. So then you can just go and install LastPass from the Chrome store as an extension to the current Edge, and that should work. So, but I mean, go try one of these new Edge browsers, right? Like, you have 3 flavors now, and give it a shot yourself. It's always worth trying out, but I haven't heard that this stuff doesn't work. So
I do want to also share some stats that Microsoft sort of released regarding Edge Chromium so far. They're very proud to announce that the Edge previews so far have seen over 1 million downloads, which is fairly nice. Over 140,000 bits of individual feedback, and over 1,000 commits to the Chromium project itself. Now, when Microsoft first told me about this 1 million downloads number, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. But a few people online sort of pointed out to me that, 1 million downloads doesn't sound like too much, considering there's 16 million Windows Insiders. And I'm pretty sure I don't think there are 16 million insiders actively testing insider builds.
No, and don't forget that part of that 60 million are part of IT where
Business side,
they're doing business insider stuff
yeah,
too, and so they don't get a choice. But this all just backs up the whole. There's 2 points here, right? Which is that one, it's super hard to create a new browser and try to compete with Chrome. Two, Microsoft will benefit from when they finally start bundling this, right, into
right,
Windows
yeah.
10.
And
That's
then all
where
of a sudden
you'll.
there's 800 million. Oh.
Yeah, I mean they hit 10. I think they're at 10 million plus on Android for Edge,
Yeah.
which is like that's significant. So I wouldn't make too much out of that. Like I said,
Well, yeah, Microsoft seems pretty proud of that number, so I'm assuming it's fine. But yeah, a few people pointed out that 1 million doesn't sound like too much when you consider numbers of Windows and the insider program and everything else. But I think it's for
Yeah.
different. I think it's different audiences.
I was gonna say Edge. Yeah, Edge on Android is over 10 million downloads. So I
Yeah.
mean that's impressive.
I mean, well, I guess even though because this Edge browser is great, it's basically, I think, the best browser out there now. If you're not a Google user, of course, I think this is the browser to use because it's basically the greatness of Chrome without all the Google stuff. But I don't know if that's going to be enough to sort of put it back on top. I don't think Microsoft is building this browser with the idea that this will become the number one browser.
Yeah. I mean, and there's also this Paul Thurrott didn't think that was a large number, one of 16 million for the insiders. But here's the thing. It's not like those 16 million were using Edge. Like,
Yeah,
for
right.
all we don't know the numbers here, but it is completely plausible that only 1 million out of the 16 million insiders were ever using Edge anyway. The other 15 million are always been using Chrome and Firefox, and that's just what they're on. So, I mean, it's hard. I mean, if have you ever talked to a family member who uses a different browser, try to convince them to change?
Yeah.
It's not an easy task, So, but the way Microsoft has to go forward with this, of course, is by one, as soon as they start bundling it with the operating system and make it the default one, that actually does do a lot. That's why IE lived on for so long, was because people loved it. Two, adding features that Chrome doesn't have, and we saw that in the past with the previous Edge for inking and working with OneNote and all this kind of stuff. So, but they still have time to figure that out, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just hoping the Edge brand hasn't been tarnished too much. Because my biggest worry for this is that even when the new Edge is bundled in Windows by default, people are still going to open it and go, well, it's still Edge, and go and download Chrome.
Which brings up the question: should they do an advertising campaign?
Or just rebrand it. I don't know what the problem would be to rebrand it. I know they say it's the reason they called it Edge and the reason they kept the E is so that it's familiar to users. But I think that's the exact problem that this browser is going to have, is that people know what it is, and what they know is what old Edge is or what old Internet Explorer is, and not what this is.
Well, again, maybe that's sometimes where I think we get into our tech bubble. I think there's a lot of people who just never tried Edge. I think just a lot of people set up a new PC. They know Chrome. They have their browser extensions in Chrome and their passwords saved in Chrome or Firefox. And so they just go and download it. And it's just habit. It's no different than when I set up a PC. I grab GroupMe first. I grab Slack first. I grab Skype. I grab certain apps of things I use and I'm familiar with. So I don't know if it's necessarily the branding part. Although, I mean, I know what you're saying, where I'm sure there are people out there who tried Edge and were like, this is not as good, and switched away. But I think this gets back to the whole one out-of-box experience for this new Windows 10 update when it finally ships with this new Edge. Like, how do you present this as like a new version and it's way better, as well as, possibly commercial TVs. And that sounds weird, but when Firefox redid their browser recently and made it super fast, like there are commercials on like network TV I saw advertising this. And so, Firefox isn't a huge company. So Microsoft should, at least I would hope, be considering that when this does go and they're really ready to take on Chrome, that they run some commercials just to sort of get it out there. I mean, I don't know. It seems natural to me, but we'll see.
If they do that, I think they also have to sort of laugh at themselves. about old Edge. You'd be like, old Edge is gone now. Trust us. You know, we're glad to see it gone too. Here's the new Edge. If you like Chrome, you like Edge, and stuff like that. You know, I think they need to be very honest with the public instead of trying to just pretend. Oh, this is all part of the plan. Don't worry. They should be very honest in their marketing. Okay? You know, old Edge was rubbish. This new Edge, though, give it a go. It's great.
Yeah. Part of me agrees, though. I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing like a cooler name and just like a new logo and just calling it something like,
just a new start.
Yeah. Microsoft A-Train. Sorry, I was watching The Boys. Have you watched The Boys on Amazon?
I haven't. I've been meaning to watch it, but I haven't yet.
It's so good. It's like, anyone who's heard me speak before, it's one of the few comics I've ever actually read too. I'm not a comic book nerd, but I remember I was working in the hospital. I had an iPad, and the one good thing iPads were good at back then were for reading digital comics, and so that was the ones I got. And it's an amazing story. It's really done well. So yeah, that's my media recommendation. But yeah, I mean, part of me thinks that they should kind of just give it a fast name and a rebrand with a new icon.
They should just call it Fast. Fast, the web browser.
Yeah, that gets into that, like, what's too generic, right? That's like Silicon Valley naming,
right. Let's call it Aura.
Just call it Browse. Browse.
Browse the internet.
Browse.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's like Firefox is kind of a cool name.
Yeah,
anything
with fire. Yeah, anything with fire is a pretty cool name. Just call it Fire Edge.
Fire Edge. Yeah.
Edge Fire.
Yeah, they probably should do that. Like,
it's too late now. It's too late. If they were going to do it, they should have done it when they moved to Chromium, but they didn't. So
yeah, someone brought up they should have stuck with Spartan. Yeah, Spartan's not a bad name. It's all right.
Spartan is a good name for the browser. Oh well, Edge it is. They're not changing it now. There's no way they're changing it because they would have changed it when they moved to Chromium. That would have been the best time to do it. An entire clean slate. But they decided
they still do it up until they ship a non-beta version. I think they can absolutely do this.
I think we're too far gone. Have you seen the Edge Insider preview website? They've got the branding all done. It's all Edge dev.
Dude, this is the company that changed its music service like 8 times before killing it.
That's very, very true.
We'll never forget them for.
That's the next stage, right? It's killing Edge. It's like, well, we tried. We made it Chrome and nobody used it. Time to just put Chrome in
and that's a good thing to bring up because I know someone probably actually believes that who's listening to this right now, but I don't think there's real reason because don't forget a lot of the work for Edge is now done open source part of the Chrome
One
project.
of the reasons they moved to Chrome, and now Microsoft will never admit this,
money.
Yeah, is so that they don't have to develop an entire browser. They now have an open source community building most of it.
Yep. and they're contributing back to it, so it's a bet.
Yeah,
they win kind of on all fronts here. They save money. They're going to create a better browser. Mm-hmm. It's goodwill with the open source. They're also helping make the web better because there's that's kind of the whole idea of this consortium stuff. It's sort of like they could either fight against the tide or be like, we're going to help make the web better because everybody's already using this Chrome thing anyway. But now we can actually kind of influence where Chrome goes and the standards and what it works with. For instance, they're bringing better scrolling and ARM support. Like, if you don't like Edge and you have no plans of using Edge, well, guess what? You're going to get the effects of Edge when you start using Chrome because as soon as you start getting better scrolling and pinch to zoom and all that, that's Microsoft's contribution. So, like, even there, they still kind of win because, yeah, it's good stuff. I mean, I don't know. I kind of like this project, but I don't see them like, yeah, we're getting rid of Edge now because whatever they're paying for it now is substantially less than what they were back when they're doing the Edge HTML stuff. So
yeah, and like if they decide that there's no point working on Edge anymore, they can still be updated, right? But with the new Chromium improvements and stuff, and Windows needs a default browser regardless of whether or not Microsoft wants to build one. Windows needs a default way to get online so that they can go and download other browsers or do basic tasks. So Edge isn't going away if that's what people are wondering.
I do like this name, Microsoft Flamium.
So I said browse, just browse.
Yeah, just browse. So,
all right, so that's done with Edge. Shall we move on to the Galaxy Note 10? It came out this week. It's finally available to buy in all the markets where Samsung sells it. I don't know those markets. It's available in the UK, and mine has arrived. And so I'm not going to be talking about the device really as like I'm going to be talking about it more from a Microsoft perspective, but my impressions on the device itself is that it's beautiful hardware. The OS is still One UI, so I'm not a huge fan of its version of Android. but I'm getting by. It's not as horrible as previous versions of Samsung's OS has been, but I would prefer if this was stock Android or like a stock UI.
Yeah.
But it's
It's
not.
still, and I run, the Note 9 side by side, whether it's my Huawei devices, the One Note, One Plus, One Note, One Plus devices, even the Pixel, of course. I mean, but Samsung stuff still is just, it's slower. It is slower. Um, and I know most of people are going to try it and it'll feel fast to them and they'll be fine with it. And that's important to consider. But as someone who's had a couple of these phones and various models, like I just find their stuff more sluggish to use. I just do.
Well, it's definitely bloated, but that's because Samsung loves to put every single feature you could possibly think of into their phones, and the only way to do that really is to build them as sort of modular parts that you can't uninstall that sit on top of Android, and that's why it feels bloated. But there are ways to disable a lot of that, which I have done, and it's fine. Like It's not so bad that I can't use this device. It's like I can get by with it now. Whereas if I was using a Galaxy S6 or an S7, I wouldn't have been able to do that because TouchWiz was just so bad. Although I think at that point they were calling it Samsung Experience. Either way, it wasn't great. But the reason I got this phone is primarily because of the Microsoft tie-ins, and I was just expecting things to sort of be preloaded by default and that be the end of it. But no, they've actually, Microsoft and Samsung have gone a little bit further than that and actually improved some of the experiences here and there. So the Your Phone stuff, for example, it's not, the Your Phone app is, although it's on the device, you can't find it in like the apps list and stuff. It's not actually like an app that sits in the apps list. It's integrated into the OS experience, and that's why you see it as a quick action. It's also in the Samsung settings app as a native option to set up. The Your Phone UI looks like a Samsung sort of settings pane. And I actually prefer this. I actually think this looks way better than the standalone Your Phone app on other Android devices. But in addition to that, Microsoft, since it's now an integral part of the operating system, it's more of an OS service rather than a manual app that's just been installed at the user level. It has additional capabilities, which means it's now much more reliable. The connection between the phone and the PC itself is much more reliable for things like SMS sending and notification sync. But not only that, you can now use the screen mirroring feature on any Windows 10 PC without Bluetooth LE. And that this is exclusive to the Galaxy Note 10 right now. All the other devices that support screen mirroring only works on a handful of PCs because it requires Bluetooth LE and the correct drivers and stuff. But this now works on any Windows 10 PC, whether it be the Surface Studio 1 or some old school Windows laptop that runs Windows 10. It should work just fine now. And I've tried it, and it's incredible how much different, or how much better the experience is compared to, say, the OnePlus I was using before. I need to sneeze. Okay, it's passed. The OnePlus I was using before, or the Pixel 3 XL I was using before. It's just instant now. When a notification pops up on the phone, I see it on my PC and stuff. And this is how I assumed this was going to be from the beginning on other phones, and it wasn't. It was kind of slower and less reliable. But now it's not. And
that's because, we'll talk a little bit about that. They're using Wi-Fi Direct, I believe.
Yeah.
Versus just Bluetooth. Mm-hmm. And, we've talked about this in the past about the differences between this, say, and Dell Connect. Dell Connect uses Bluetooth as like to wave down devices. It's like, hey, and once it makes contact with a device, in other words, you walk into a room and it detects your phone, it then goes to Wi-Fi Direct for the connection versus Bluetooth. And Bluetooth, don't get me wrong, Bluetooth 5.0, it's actually getting really nice. Works very well with my car. I've noticed a big difference in that relation. But in terms of data transfer and all this and instantaneous stuff, it's still just not as good versus Wi-Fi Direct. Wi-Fi Direct basically creates a direct network with the device. So you don't actually need to be on Wi-Fi. You can be on a plane and still use Wi-Fi Direct with two devices. And because of that, the bandwidth difference is just massive. So this allows things like, phone mirroring to work way better, more instantaneous, for notifications to go back and forth. With Dell Connect, it's like you can just take your phone, keep it in your pocket or your bag, never touch it. You have full access to the phone, including if a phone call comes in, you get a little pop-up notification that comes across the screen. And, I've talked about this, how like it doesn't even tell you who's calling, or it says their name, but I think it's their name, but you have to hover over it. Now, I think it just says incoming call, but when you hover over it with your mouse, it then reveals their photo, their name and phone number and all that kind of stuff. It's for privacy, right? And this all works beautifully. And so I've been using that for a while. Now, I know Microsoft has been doing the other way, with just the Bluetooth, so they could hit all the devices out there, whether it's an old PC, a new PC, it's a new phone, all this kind of stuff. Whereas Dell Connect is restricted to laptops after 2018 because you have to have certain chipsets and you have to run, I believe, Android 8.0 or later. Same thing issue there. So they're way more restrictive. That said, the Dell one actually runs, it can run on a Surface Book. I mean, we've siloed it before and it works. But the Dell Connect is a much better experience. It's the experience that people who are coming from Mac expect. Whereas your phone, it just never has really lived up to anything. Yeah, it works. Yeah, you can hit refresh and then you wait like 10 seconds and the dots will spin and boop, there. It's like, okay, that's kind of cool. It's certainly easier to get photos that way than emailing yourself, for instance. But what you're experiencing is sort of the way it should be.
Right.
And it obviously required a lot more cooperation between Microsoft and Samsung to make that happen. I'd still like to see that go wider, though, because this janky Your Phone experience today is just, it's not very good, despite their what I think is a good attempt, you know.
I do hope that this improved Your Phone experience does come to other, especially non-Samsung devices, because I'm not the hugest fan of Samsung. I don't want to have to keep buying Samsungs forever now because I'm part of Microsoft ecosystem. I would rather they roll this out to more devices later, but I don't know if they can, because I'm going to guess one of the reasons why this works now on this device is because the Your Phone app is now a system service. It's actually integrated into the OS. It has it like.
It shouldn't have to be, though.
No, right.
Because
but there might be an
Connect,
Android limitation, right?
Well, Dell Connect works on any Android phone that's just modern. You just download the app from the store and you just do that, right?
That's true.
So I don't understand why they can't do it that way. Sure, I mean, it's kind of cooler to even do what they're doing, which is like it's weaved into the OS, so it pops up in certain areas. Like, that's cool. And there's no reason why they can't form partnerships with other companies. And I will say, it's at least smart they're going after Samsung. That's the top, right? I mean, Samsung is probably, I think they are the biggest, the Android distributor of phones. Of course, they have, like, everybody thinks of the Galaxy series, but they actually do have their A series and their other phones too. So all those combined make up a huge ecosystem. So it's smart that they're going after Samsung. I would like to see obviously Huawei or OnePlus, because those are my two favorite brands right now. LG could don't bother. I don't think LG is going to last another year. I really don't. And HTC, who cares? But it comes down to basically Oppo and a lot of these Chinese manufacturers, I think. So hopefully we'll see some movement there. I would like to see more partnerships. I think Huawei is going to be tough just because of the current climate right now. But, that's the only way to go. So
yeah, I agree. So other sort of changes that Microsoft has made is that by default there is a Microsoft folder on the home screen. Now, actually, funnily enough, this isn't there. It is there when you start up for the first time and boot into it and stuff. But if you're somebody, there's a trick that. See, because this is how much I hate Samsung phones. I hate all the bloatware that comes on them. And by default, when you set it up for the first time, it automatically pulls in a whole bunch of just extra crap from the Samsung App Store, which I just don't want. And there's a way to circumvent that by if you just go through the setup process and not insert any information, don't sign into Wi-Fi or anything. You get to the desktop stuff, and then you reset the phone again and then do the setup properly. That will then prompt you for which apps you want to install. And if you don't tick that, then nothing comes through, including most of the Microsoft apps. The only one that actually does get bundled is OneDrive. Everything else is powered through the store. So by default,
so there's no Microsoft edition of the Samsung.
No, there's no. But other than Link to Windows, sorry, the Your Phone companion is part of the OS and that remains. But Outlook and Office and LinkedIn are apps that download from the store. But by default, if you're not like me and if you just go for the setup like normal, by default you will get Outlook and LinkedIn and stuff installed by default, and it's Outlook. You get the additional sort of pen functionality, so you can hover over emails and stuff to see previews of them, which is kind of nice.
And I have seen internal stuff showing that Outlook is being optimized for Samsung phones.
Like for Dex, for example, there'll be a Samsung Dex experience and whatnot, or a Galaxy Fold experience that sort of has 3 panes like a normal email client does. But other than that, that's basically it. The rest of it is very much still Samsung.
I do like the new look for the S10 Note or
the Note 10.
Note 10.
I prefer this compared to the right hanging side punch hole they had on the S10 series. I just don't like how It makes sense to have it in the middle because there's nothing in the middle of a status bar for most of the time. But if you have the punch hole on the right, that's where the battery icon and the signal goes. So they have to shift it over, and then it looks stupid. So that's why I didn't like the S10 series. But the Note 10 doesn't have that problem because the punch hole is in the middle of the screen or at the middle top, and that's basically where it should be.
I actually was going to say I have the Honor 20 Pro here and it has it on the left side.
But it's like that's where your app notifications go. So now it has to shift all the app notifications over to a bit, and that's stupid. It's stupid design. Don't do it, OEMs. If you're listening, don't do it.
That's something we didn't talk about actually. That was in China last week.
Oh yeah, you were. Yes. We'll actually talk a bit about that in a minute. But basically, my overall impressions are that listen, if you're a Microsoft user, get this phone because the Your Phone stuff works great anyway. Although, to be fair, apparently it might be coming to older Galaxies anyway, like the S10 series, because there was a leak this week that sort of showed off One UI 2.0, an update coming later this year for Samsung devices. And it had linked to Windows on the Galaxy S10 Plus. So if you are a Galaxy S10, even S9 user, I would wait a bit to see if this feature's coming or this integration is coming to your phone, because it might. In which case you don't need to go out and spend $1,000 on a Note 10. But if you're using a non-Galaxy device and you want to just be all in a Microsoft, this is a good one to get. Also, I haven't tried the smaller one, but I think the smaller one will be a better bet for most people because this big one is big, and it might be a bit too unwieldy for most people. The pen stuff is nice. It works with OneNote, which is, I guess, the only reason I would use it. But I can't see myself using this too much. I'm not really a pen user. I don't draw, and I type faster than I actually write with handwriting. So yeah, I will see how the pen turns out. But I've only had it for basically a day, so impressions are early, and I'm going to do a full review from a Microsoft perspective on the device, hopefully next week. So I'll have more thoughts on that then.
Sounds good. I don't have any immediate plans to pick up a Note 10.
No.
Although if someone wants to give me one, I'll give it a fair shake. Yeah. But honestly, I'm just not. I'm very happy. It's funny. So I was in China last week, hanging out with Huawei. They're giving us a campus tour. Got to see all their research facilities. Got to see how a phone was made, which was super cool. Their production line and all that kind of stuff. And so I was using the P30 Pro there, which, it's a pretty outstanding phone. It's heavy. I'm not a fan anymore of the curved edges on the sides, which Samsung pioneered with the Edge. I think the S6 Edge was actually one of my first Edge devices I had. I find it superfluous and prefer the flat screens. But they did let me borrow their P20 Pro, which I don't follow these phones very much. So this is actually Honor, the Honor P20. Honor's a sub-brand of Huawei that it's more for younger people, and the colors tend to be geared towards more female, tastes. I tell you though, I'm using the P20 Pro now as my main phone. I like it better because it's a flat phone. So this actually looks a lot like the iPhone.
Yeah.
In terms of the rounded corners on it. I have a case on it, but it's got rounded corners on it. But the shape and how wide it is, it's very iPhone. They do have the fingerprint reader on the side, which is the power button too. Holy cow. Those two things combined are super fast. Like, it's so fast, I'm probably going to turn off the face recognition stuff because, it has raise to wake and all that kind of stuff. And of course, it has the themes, Type-C. The speaker's okay on it. No headphone jack, of course. But it's really fast with the Kirin 980 and nice display. And it's got the best thing is the back. It's got the quad camera array that's on the P30 Pro. And the only difference, it doesn't have has an 8x telephoto versus, I think, what's it, 10x or 20x on the P30. The P30 has a ridiculous periscope lens on it, which a lot of people pointed out. It's super cool, but it's also kind of gimmicky compared to, say, a wide angle lens, which is what this has too. But this is a really good camera on this thing. Has the time of flight sensor and all that stuff. But this phone is $680, which is super cheap. Now you can actually get the non-pro version for, I think, $500, and that's honestly the better buy. It has some features that's not on here. I forgot what it is, but I'm just really impressed with sort of what these companies are doing these days for the price point. But Huawei, it was neat. their PR was very nice and giving us a tour. Where I was in Shenzhen, which is actually where your iPhone is made. A lot of Android phones are made. City of 12 million people, very cosmopolitan. I think people have this idea that like Shenzhen's like this like factory town, so there's like smokestacks. It's actually not like that at all. The city was built like 30 years ago, and it's all the it's just really cool. Their entire public transit system, buses and cabs, are all electric. So there's like no pollution. The city was immaculate. Of course, I was there during the Hong Kong protests. Hong Kong is right next to Shenzhen, so there's some concern we weren't able to get home, but it all worked out. So that was an interesting time to be there. But yeah, Huawei, their campus is massive. So they're building a new campus. It's over 2 miles, 2 square miles size, and they're rebuilding basically based off an old European town. And it's just like, it's totally insane. You can go on my Instagram, you can see the photos of it. This is a company with deep pockets, and that's they're selling a lot of devices, and they're doing a lot of partnerships in China with other companies for home IoT stuff, which is so far advanced in what we're doing here. So it was just an interesting cultural difference to see where tech is going in China versus the United States, and what you can do with a company is that size and selling that much stuff and has that much money. I think 15% of all their revenue goes back into R&D, which is what they sort of pride themselves on. The fact that they're always constantly, and this is, I know a lot of people like to blame Huawei for like IP theft, although, it goes back to that Tappy robot. There's no evidence that they stole phone stuff, although it's obvious that they've been inspired by Apple. But that's literally Samsung. You can leverage that. I mean, Samsung's for years was, copying Apple left and right. Now it's kind of changing, right? And Apple's kind of copying everybody else. But, Huawei will say, well, the reason they've been able to advance so far, and I've been saying this now for the last year, right, that their cameras are just, go look at the DxO marks, right? Their scores for, like this camera, this $670 phone's camera, I think right now is rated number 3 on DxO. Kills the Pixel 3. It's like, it's so far ahead of everything. And the reason Huawei would say this is because they're always investing back into research and development. They're always pushing and trying to go to the next thing. And it's just, I keep telling people, man, China, and when it comes to technology, is it's the story to watch, because for years for us in the United States, it was always South Korea. And I've been saying that I think South Korea is going to start to lose out on this. I think LG is going to be out of the smartphone business real soon. Samsung is doing all right, and I think they'll continue to do all right. They have a pretty solid position, but they're definitely fighting a two-front war, one against Apple, especially United States, for high-end stuff, and then they're fighting against China for these new. The game now is, I know everybody focuses on the $1,000 phones, but the real game is in these $600 phones, right? Because that's where actually people can afford. That was what people considered normal phones years ago, but these new mid-range phones are getting these really high-end features now. And it's just like, like I said, I have the P30 Pro, which is like almost $900, and I have this phone, which is like almost $700. And I choose the P30, or sorry, the one that's $700. Like, it goes to show you something about how good this tech is getting. But yeah, other than that, Chinese food, interesting. I was I was there for a week. By Wednesday, I was like, I really just want a hamburger.
Give me that American
cheese.
Food.
Yeah, there's some cheese, but I did embrace, we only had authentic cuisine, and their Huawei's campus has very good food. They have this interesting policy where they invite restaurants into their campus to open up, and they have like central areas for food courts basically. But these restaurants they're not supposed to charge less for being on Huawei than they would outside of being on Huawei. So if they have like a chain or something like that, to try to win business, because then Huawei says, well, if you're cutting, we know how much you're supposed to be making. Like you're going to sacrifice the quality somewhere, and we don't want that. So you have to charge whatever you're charging the regular world. Wow. And then at the end of every year, 1 or 2 restaurants get voted off.
It's like a game show.
Yeah, and it's based on employee satisfaction. So it doesn't matter. Like, you could still be like, you could have got like an A- in terms of satisfaction, But but if everybody else was A's, like you're gone.
That
And
puts so
then
much
getting into the
pressure,
restaurant.
unnecessary pressure on your business.
Yeah, yeah. So the restaurants there though are always on their top game
Yeah,
because of that.
seriously.
It's awesome. Like everybody's super. I mean, the employees that work there seem generally happy. They get nap time, an optional nap time, 1 to 2 p.m. every day.
That's
Um,
fantastic.
they get if you're new, they recruit a lot of times out of college. They have apartments already set up on campus that are very low cost, and you can just basically walk. To work, which is kind of nice. After 2 years, though, you're supposed to move out from that.
Yeah.
But it's neat. Obviously, they have an authoritarian government, and there's a lot of issues in China that I don't agree with. At the same time, when you see this juggernaut of this machine rolling, it's just like, geez. I mean, they have 88,000 people, I think, work at this one campus. We would be walking and they'd be like, so if you noticed, you don't see any cars. And they're like, oh, yeah, that's right. They're like, that's because we have our parking spaces underground. Like you're walking right now on top of a parking spot. It holds 10,000 cars. You're just like, 10,000 cars. And you're like, yeah, we have like 3 more of those throughout the campus. It's just like, it's just mind boggling, the size of this place. And, it was also hot. So,
Oh, was it warm there?
yeah, so it was, let me do the conversions because I know a lot of you guys are Celsius. So, uh, okay, so the average temperature we were there, it was 91 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 33 degrees Celsius, which is warm, but not crazy. But due to the humidity was so intense there. It's like 70, 80% every day. The real field temperature was 116 degrees Fahrenheit or
Ooh.
47 degrees
Oh my God.
Celsius.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, you basically melt. And so you actually didn't see, even though the city was 12 million people, the population density is actually pretty low because it's a spread out city.
Yeah.
So it actually never felt that big, but also people during the day, you don't go outside unless you really have to.
Yeah.
It was sweltering, but
Crazy.
fantastic experience. Love to go see where Microsoft makes their stuff because they're in that area too, I believe. But yeah, it was an interesting cultural experience and kind of nice to see all that stuff.
You know what I just realized? I realized we skipped the glass thermostat
Yeah,
stuff. Do you want to quickly talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, because I know we're kind of running along here. Yeah, so the glass thermostat released last year. We reviewed it on YouTube. It was okay. It was a good thermostat. I wasn't blown away by it. It did bring some features I thought were important to people for health concerns, for pollen count, and it measures the air quality inside in terms of particles. And this is important for people with allergies who are sensitive to certain chemicals and stuff. So this thermostat does stuff that your Nest or your Ecobee doesn't do. And of course, I had this really cool see-through display that looked like a hologram kind of thing. And it's a good thermostat. It is expensive. I think it was like $300, which is more than what you pay for a Nest or Ecobee. It didn't have the separate room sensors, which Ecobee does, and Nest I don't think still does. It had a pretty good working app and all this kind of stuff. And the big thing was, or big, why we were interested in, of course, was it worked with Cortana. And not only that, like it was Cortana. Like it had a microphone in there and you can like call up Cortana and request things. It was kind of weird. I always find these things Ecobee does is now with Alexa. I have an Alexa light switch. I don't use this technology, right? When I asked Cortana to play Spotify through my thermostat, she's like, no. And I'm like, yeah, that's probably right. You probably shouldn't be playing music through your thermostat. But if you, I don't know. Like, if I already have like smart speakers, which are just down the hall or sometimes even the next room. So I feel like I don't need to be like in the hallway right there at that moment, be like, I need to know trivia. Thank God Cortana is here in my thermostat. But it was kind of neat because you can control Cortana through the app on your phone while you're driving, tell it to turn up the temperature, that kind of thing. So the big news was this week that they just pulled out Cortana. And, this goes back, if you're on the team Cortana is dead, and then you got that, right? I did find it weird versus like, we're not going to just support Cortana anymore, or we don't expect much going on, and they just pulled it. Like that's
gone.
kind of
Yeah, that is weird. Now, the reports I read of this, the headlines were sort of very clickbaity, and they were sort of along the lines of Microsoft is, not Microsoft, Glass, the company, are replacing Cortana with Google Assistant and Alexa on the thermostat. That's not exactly what's happening. What's happening is Glass are just pulling Cortana, and that's it. The way you will interact with the thermostat through voice now is via external assistants, such as Alexa speakers or Google Assistant speakers. They're not putting Alexa or Google Assistant into the thermostat. What's happening is the thermostat's just losing the support to be able to talk to it directly. You'll now be able to control it like how you control an Xbox with an Alexa. You use the Alexa skill, the Xbox skill on the Alexa device. You'll be able to use a Glass thermostat skill on an Alexa or Google Assistant. So in theory, if Glass really wanted to, they could build a skill for Cortana as well, and you could still use other Cortana devices like that. But what's actually happening is they're just turning off the ability to talk to the thermostat itself, and the way you did that was through Cortana. So that's where the headlines came from. Now, I agree with you, Dan. I think it's stupid that things like thermostats even have assistants to begin with. It makes more sense to just use them through skills, right? Like if you have an Alexa speaker, it makes more sense just to say, "Hey Alexa, turn the heating up," and that just connects via a skill to the thermostat, and then just turn it up for you that way. Although you are right in the sense that I think it was I think the reason they got rid of it is because they would prefer having the control, like the app, for example, be their own branded thing rather than using the Cortana app. I think that's where primarily this is that right?
I mean, well, they did have a Glass app.
Oh, did they? Okay, so what could you do in the Cortana app? Just the same stuff?
Yeah, the Cortana app was just more about the voice.
Oh, fan. Yeah. Okay. I mean, I still think that it doesn't make sense it didn't make sense for them to have.
It's no different than how like Ecobee plugs into Cortana,
right? Yeah.
That's, and then the experience, of course, was the actual Cortana as a AI sort of for the thermostat. But she get you the weather, forecast, all that kind of stuff. But I don't know.
Yeah, I think Glass were originally thinking that maybe people would just have this as their one assistant device in the house, but obviously that's not
right.
That's not what people do. They have other devices and dedicated speakers and stuff, which make much more sense. So Cortana no longer makes sense on the thermostat, so they might as well pull it. I don't see this as an incredibly bad thing for Cortana. We've always known that Microsoft has been pulling out of the idea of putting Cortana on dedicated hardware for a long time.
Like we're not going to see any more speakers.
Yeah, we learned that at Build. Like we asked them with the Cortana team directly, it's like, hey, we're going to get more speakers and stuff, and they're like, nah. Nah, you're not. What you're going to see is Cortana sort of expand as a productivity assistant that's very contextual across software, and that's what you're seeing on Windows 10 and indeed Android and iOS. And sure, it may show up still in some areas such as the Surface headphones and that magical Cortana speaker that Microsoft built internally, but we're not going to see it like take on Google Assistant or Google Home or the Alexa speakers and stuff. And that's still how it is. The Glass removing Cortana, I don't think changes that. I don't think that's like another step to the death of Cortana. I think that was already a step that had been taken to moving it to a productivity thing, and Glass is only just catching up.
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely a pivot at some point with Microsoft or Cortana, where for a while they were like, "Oh, we can do Amazon Alexa and Google Home stuff, and we'll compete there too." And at some point, they were like, nope. And I think, Glass thermostat was caught during that transitory period. It's no different than the HP Elite X3, unfortunately. Yeah. And it's a shame that, companies like this they take risks with Microsoft only to have the rug pulled out from them, right? I mean, It was a cool thermostat, but it was exactly like the Elite X3, where the Elite X3, it was a cool phone. It was a juggernaut of a phone. Now, the camera wasn't great, but the rest of the hardware on there was really pristine, but, it was also with the dock and all that. It was like, what, $800, which now isn't that expensive for a phone. I mean, still is expensive.
Yeah, it was back then.
But at that time, that was like one of the highest priced phones on the market. I think it was $899 or something like that. And so they were coming in with, here's an OS that's fledgling and like not doing well and on its, downward trend. Now it's also priced higher than the competition. And that's exactly what that thermostat, when it came out, kind of was. It's like, well, here's Cortana and it's, kind of struggling a little bit, but we're putting on hardware that's super expensive and we're going to have it like in the United States. And that was also at a time when, Ecobee and Nest were already rolling. I mean, I will keep saying is I think Ecobee is the best choice on the market right now. I have Nest right now installed because I've been testing it. So, and it's the latest Nest. I'm not like, just speaking here I have all of them. But Ecobee is the most flexible. I think it's the nicest looking, and I like the little room monitors. And plus, it's not Google, so they're not collecting your information. They also have open APIs and stuff like that. But it's a tough market to crack, right? Like smart thermostats are a limited market. Like you're probably going to buy, like if you bought a Nest, right? Like the idea that you went out and bought the latest Nest, which is slightly thinner, brighter screen, is probably pretty slim. Because even I had to like compare them directly because I had the old one and the new one. And I was just like, oh, okay. Oh, now I see the changes. But if I'm just walking my hallway, yeah, you don't notice that. So this is like you get people once, and then that's kind of it, right? Mm-hmm. Tough market, to get into. I was happy to see them try, but it would have been cooler if they had a $100 thermostat or $150 smart thermostat that could have competed more with Ecobee and Nest versus being priced $50 higher. I think that's a challenge, yeah. And especially since it's not like I could have made the argument, and this is what I did in the video review too. My video review was, I would say, pretty fair on this. It's like, it's not like Cortana does something on here that's so magical that no one else does, right? So I don't know the selling point there unless you're just a huge Microsoft fan.
Which there are not many of those anymore.
Yeah, no, not in the consumer area. No.
All right, well, do you want to do your general tech talk, or are we running out of time?
We're kind of running out of time. I'll just quickly mention, though, that I am testing the Fossil Gen 5 smartwatch here. It's beautiful hardware. I don't want to take this away from Fossil. It's one of the nicest looking things. It does have an always on display, which is really kind of cool. So I know you can see that on camera right now if you're watching this on our video. That's the always on display. You can change the clock faces, of course, but it's nice. It's a nice feature. There aren't many Android devices or even Apple Watch can't do this, having an always on display. Not even Fitbit does that. And I actually get better battery life with this than the having it off and raised to wake kind of thing. Raised to wake actually seems to use more battery life. And battery life was terrible the first day, but then I had a bunch of people telling me, wait 3 days and it'll get better. And I was like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, because that doesn't make sense. It's ones and zeros. How does it break in? But sure enough, it actually does break in. I'm getting around, and what I use at the gym as a music player, or to music media player controls, I should say. It doesn't do music directly. Yeah, I'm using like 50% over the entire time of the day, which, is actually pretty good. So you could theoretically go 2 days with this, right? Definitely a day and a half. The rest of Wear OS, though, yeah, and I'm talking, I hung out with David Ruddock from Android Authority, I believe it is. I always pick those up. And some of our Android Central people I was talking to, and a bunch of Android fans, right, who covered the stuff. And they're like, yeah, Google kind of just gave up on Wear OS. Like, even like Android fans are just like, yeah, kind of like where Microsoft fans are sometimes with things, because like the software is just, if you were on, say, an iPhone, or you're looking to change ecosystems and a wearable was your, a big choice for you, I fully believe now Apple Watch Series 4, and will probably be Series 5 too, is definitely the best smartwatch on the market by a mile. It's not even close. Like, they've done such a beautiful job. Their haptics are on a whole other level. Like, it literally feels like someone's tapping your arm. The display is better, smaller bezels, sharper looking display, better colors. The apps work better now. It's got a faster processor. Like, it's just better. And like Wear OS right now is where Android like 3 was, right? When Android was still new and it was trying to catch up to Apple, and everybody saw the potential, but everybody's like, yeah, it still kind of sucks. It's like, battery life is terrible. Like, that's exactly where they are right now. And it's just not a lot of evidence that they're like doing much to change it. Fossil's done some really nice customization on here to help make up for that, but it's still weird to use. Their app the settings don't match from the app to the device. Speaking of apps, I just installed one last night for my Tesla, and it was terrible. Like, and I don't blame the developer. It's just like it was slow. It didn't bring down the stuff. It was just not a good experience. Whereas I literally bought the Series 4 Apple Watch because someone was like, "Hey, you can use it with your Tesla. You can get this third-party app and control your car." I was like, oh. So literally went out to Best Buy and bought it. And you and I have talked about this. Like the Apple Watch is fantastic, but what's the problem, Zach?
It's an iPhone only accessory.
Yeah, and the iPhone is just I can live with an iPhone, but like when I see like these Huawei devices or what OnePlus is doing, I'm just like, it's way cooler. It's
Yeah.
way cooler. It's just like it's just a better experience. So I have trouble living on an iPhone. And that just brings me to where wearables are in 2019. They all kind of suck. Now, I know someone's going to probably bring up Samsung's Gear series, which runs Tizen. So they don't run. So even Samsung's like, screw Wear OS. We'll just use our own thing. And I've heard mixed things about Tizen. Obviously, with Tizen, the downside is you don't get apps, which I would say in Wear OS's case doesn't matter.
Yeah, right.
You don't want to use those apps anyway. I heard it does get better battery life. It's a little bit faster and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. I haven't used it. I am planning on probably getting a new, I think, Wear 2 version that was just announced when they announced the Note 10. Probably take a look at that. I do also have tomorrow showing up, and Zach and I talked about this before the podcast, the Honor Band 5, I believe it's called. It's more like a Fitbit Charge. It's a bracelet kind of thing. But I saw this thing in China and I was immediately blown away. And they said they were going to get me one for review, but I just bought one. And the reason I bought one was because I got it and there's a coupon, Zach. I didn't tell you there's a coupon. I actually got it for $38. It's a $38 wearable. It has a heart rate sensor and does sleep tracking, gets good battery life, and has an OLED display. Like, the Fitbit Charge is $150. Like, I don't understand what's going on here. These numbers don't add up. But I'm going to take a look at that too. Wearables are still kind of all over the place. You still have to choose, do you want fitness or do you just want a smartwatch? And then if you want fitness, you actually have a lot of options. There's the new Polar Ignite, which actually looks really nice. I'm considering getting that. Of course, you have Garmin, which I'm not a runner. I know runners love Garmin. I'm not a runner. I'll never wear Garmin. I think their stuff is hideous, but I get it. If you're a runner, I respect your decision. So, and of course you have Fitbit. So you have a ton of options for fitness. If you want smartwatch though, you're like, I want a thing that runs apps. I want LTE. I want all of this. I really think your only real choice is still the Apple Watch, which sucks if you're on Android because it's not a choice, right? So,
or Microsoft Band. That was the best of both worlds.
I know the band really did
this weird middle ground
world. It did fitness well. I said their sleep tracking, and I say this as someone who was a sleep technician, was actually very good. The health stuff was good. The UI and UX was, I thought, unique and cool. It was very functional. The whole screen on the inside of your wrist thing was still so useful. Notifications worked. Cortana worked very well with Windows Phone, if you remember that. And having that long display was great for reading text. It even had a working keyboard. Like, yeah, I'm still pissed that Microsoft gave up on that. I understand. We both understood, the problems that they faced, but they should have
sorted out those problems.
Yeah, I felt like they should have been like, all right, we're going to pull back for a year or two. We're going to figure this out, and we're going to come back. And now it's just like, there's no sign. Like, they've shut down Microsoft Health. All that stuff is gone. It's been dismantled. So I don't see
was like, there's no Azure tie-in. Kill it.
Yeah, so I don't see how they would come back. I know some people have been like, well, what about Windows Lite or IoT? Like, I guess it's theoretically possible, but you can speak to this. Have you heard anything about this?
Right. No, I haven't. Microsoft doesn't want to compete. That's the thing. If there's a market where there's competition going on, Microsoft doesn't want to enter it because there's no point. And Microsoft is happy to be in markets where it's already competing well.
But do you think, someone brought this up, what about Surface Watch, right? Like,
I would love a Surface Watch.
But
what would it run?
I would say, I agree with you with the not compete and all this kind of stuff, but but Surface headphones, right? Surface headphones is weird.
Yeah, but that's not a platform. You don't have to support it.
I agree. And so, right, they had just Cortana on there, but you're right. That doesn't run apps or need to run apps. So, but I'm just wondering, yeah. If Samsung can get away with Tizen, why can't Microsoft get away with a Surface Watch?
Yeah, but
Tizen's not running apps.
But I would guess it's because Samsung Samsung's sort of margin for success is way lower than what Microsoft's would be, I guess. If Microsoft is entering the smartwatch market, then I think it wants a chunk of it.
I feel like they could, if they can make it around the experience of productivity and your Surface and all this, it could be interesting. Because like Fitbit too, like Fitbit runs apps. And I put it in quotes because I have the Versa and the Versa Lite, and I don't run apps on it. Like they suck. And there's not a lot of apps, and their ecosystem really hasn't taken off anyway. It's kind of like Tizen. So like, I'm not sure the app thing, it's not quite the smartphone story. I mean, I get your point, but I'm just wondering if they could build in unique experiences that no one else has done using their, finesse and know-how to do something that is not on the market, just kind of like what Microsoft Band did. Even if you can't install 30,000 apps onto it, which even on my Apple Watch, I really only used a handful.
The Apple Watch is great, but the only reason it's great is because the UX is so fluid and fast, and the notification, like the notification sync is instant. It's like instant, and you can actually like do stuff with the notifications. Like you don't actually have to pull out your phone. Whereas a lot of wearables, you do it. You see a notification, and it's like, well, now I've got to pull out my phone to deal with that. Whereas on the Apple Watch and the iPhone, you don't have to, because you can do most of what you would want to do to answer that notification or deal with that notification directly on the Apple Watch. That's what makes the Apple Watch stand out. If Microsoft were to make a Surface Watch, like what would it run? I guess maybe like a form of Windows Core, but then it means it's got no apps, and then they have to build the old like notification thing. And like they could do what they did with the Band and make it sort of like a firmware thing where it doesn't have an app store and it just has here's the experience we have on the device. We built out all the things we think you will need, and then that's it. Because that's what the Band was, right? It had a certain amount of things, and it had a marketplace, but there wasn't apps. You didn't you could download like one or two different things here and there, but it wasn't like an app store or for the Band at all. It was just what you got on the Band was what you got. You got that sleeping, you got your notifications, you got Cortana, you got tracking, you got running, swimming, or in the Band 3 would have been swimming, and that was it. And maybe they could do something like that again, but I'm not sure the market wants a locked down, you get what you buy, then that's it sort of watch anymore.
Yeah, it's definitely a category that has not been completely figured out. And
maybe Microsoft has something planned, but I've not heard of anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think the issue is still it's too like one of the reasons why Android Wear watches kind of suck is because they rely on Bluetooth and Bluetooth LE. It's the same thing with Fitbit, where you get the notifications, but they're not as timely. Apple is obviously doing something more. I don't know if they're using like a Wi-Fi direct, but they're using definitely like a proprietary connection with their iPhones, and at a software level on both devices, they're optimizing things so that it can't really work with an Android device. If Microsoft steps in with a wearable, they're facing the exact same problem. Like they're not going to be able to make it work much better on iOS. And they're just going to be faced with Android, the same limitations that everyone else has on that platform, which is you get Bluetooth, unless you can really unless they have some real creative people and figure out some way around that. But, that's where, again, controlling your whole ecosystem matters. And that's why Samsung went with Tizen. They're like, they did Wear OS for a while, and they're like, this sucks. We're just use our own thing.
Yeah.
But Microsoft, what's their device? They don't have one. So like now what, right? So maybe after Andromeda, which as far as we know is not happening now, comes out. It is unfortunate.
Sad times for Windows fans.
And on that note, let's end this podcast. Wah, wah, wah. But that was an interesting discussion. Hopefully we got some ideas. If you guys have ideas, let us know. We went long on this, an hour and a half. Sorry about that, or you're welcome, depending on how you thought.
How you enjoy the show.
Yeah, exactly. So, as always, we're going to do some Q&A now with the audience for our live podcast. If you're listening to this pre-recorded, apologies, this is where our podcast ends. You're always free to join us at mixer.com/Windows Central. Fridays at 2:30 p.m. Eastern time, where we do a live video broadcast of this, and you can join in the chat room and you can have fun with us and ask us questions. You can also join us on our YouTube channel at Windows Central as well. You can follow me on Twitter at Daniel_Rubino, Rubino, or Zach at ZACBOWDEN. Let us know how we're doing, and if you have any questions or want topics you want us to talk about, we always appreciate it. And as always, thanks for listening. We'll talk to you later. Take care, everyone.
Sweet. So if you have any questions, we're going to hang around for 5 or 10 minutes to answer them. because that's what we do every week. I'm just looking at TweetDeck, see if we missed anything important. Doesn't look like it.
I'm just going to open my door now. So it's getting warm.
Yeah. Oh, that's the one. That's one thing I should have mentioned. Office doesn't work on my Note 10. Well, it does, but the UI is kind of wrong. It's kind of annoying. Do you see your phone benefits coming to the iPhone in the near future? I do not. And the reason for that is Apple and not Microsoft. Microsoft was more than happy to support iPhone, and they were talking to Apple about it. And I was like, hey, can we do this, this, and this? And Apple said, no, because it's not part of their SDK, and iOS is so locked down that you can't really get any of access to that information anyway. Like, you can't sync SMS, you can't sync notifications, unfortunately, and you can't even sync photos because it's all locked down and is very secure. So, yeah, Apple said no.
Okay. It's on Skype. It says I can turn subtitles on.
Well, whatever you pressed, it really dropped your your resolution. Is it working?
Yeah. Oh my God.
Does it understand
When did this come out?
Where's subtitles? Oh, turn subtitles. I want to do it as well. Turning subtitles on. Can you say some words?
I am now talking. Here, I'll send you a screenshot of what it looks like.
Look at that.
It takes a...
It has totally frozen your video on my end. Oh, there you go. It's back now. Yeah, that works. That's pretty cool. I'm guessing if I was speaking
another... It has totally frozen your video, Batman. That says.
I'm guessing if I was speaking another language, it would translate that to English.
Right.
That's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
Know.
See? Microsoft does cool stuff.
Too bad no one uses Skype. No, I'm joking.
Oh, what are you, Jez?
Anyway, we have questions to answer, Dan. Stop being fascinated by Skype.
Sorry.
What do you think of the people, speaking of Skype, what do you think about the people who are listening to Skype conversations? We talked about this on the last podcast, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, look, everyone's doing it, and I know other companies have apparently vowed not to do it anymore. Microsoft says, nah, we're going to keep doing it. If it improves the service, then listen, I don't mind. Just don't talk about private stuff over Skype if you don't want someone that you don't know listening on into some of your snippets. I'm not defending it. I just don't have an opinion. I just don't care. I'm done caring about privacy.
We talked about it last week, and it's it's a tough problem. It's supposed to be non-identifiable information, but if you're obviously dropping your full name and home address every single time in a conversation.
Dan, are you there? No, Dan's connection has dropped ever since he enabled those subtitles. It couldn't handle it. Let's see, mate. Maybe if I turn off that, maybe that'll help him. Dan has definitely gone. Look at that! Wow, completely frozen. Let me Hello.
So I was sending you a file and it crashed.
Oh. Windows 10. Great. Any chance Scarlett would take design cues from the Surface lineup? I'd be surprised if it doesn't. The Xbox One S and the One X are very... they were designed by the Surface team, I believe, and you can kind of see it in the design, especially with the One S. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Scarlett has, some design inspirations from the Surface team. Do you think there is a device similar to the XPS 13 2-in-1 but with an ARM processor being released by an OEM sometime in the future? Not that I've heard of.
Not that I heard of, but I mean, that seems like a very plausible device that someone can make, right? It's only a matter of time, I would say. Reword that. I still think the ARM stuff we're not there for mainstream. I think you'll still see in 2020 build-up of this stuff. But, yeah, I mean, I would love to see. That's kind of like an ideal device. Although, like I said, I have high hopes for a 10th gen 2-in-1 XPS 13, but it doesn't have LTE, so that's kind of a killer. So that's where this would kind of solve that problem. Maybe Microsoft can make it. If I'm interested in Tool and I'm getting their new album, I don't really buy albums anymore. I just do Spotify. Thanks, Groove, as I'm now on Spotify all the time. So, although I still buy punk albums. Yeah, I mean, Tool's yeah, they're a fun band. I mean, I listened to them in high school. I'm that old where Opiate came out. I was never a huge Tool fan. Like, I'm not like obsessed with them, but I don't mind them. And I kind of like their stuff. So yeah, I'll pick up the new album.
Doesn't Panos control all hardware design at Microsoft now? I believe he's definitely head of hardware at Microsoft. So if there's any hardware with a Microsoft logo on it, it's his team that sort of designed it and looked into it and stuff.
Someone is asking, I forgot the name of it.
About the notepad thing?
Yeah.
Someone's questioning whether iOS is secure. iOS is the most secure mobile platform. And I'm going to guess just platform in general, I'd say. It's so because it's so locked down that you just can't get into it. It's a walled garden. And sure, if you install third-party apps, they can obviously steal whatever data you give them. But iOS itself, as just a platform, is the most... You can't break into it. It's impossible. Well, I wouldn't say impossible. Nothing's impossible. But it's, breaking into an iOS device is much more difficult compared to breaking into an Android device.
So the app I was thinking of is called QuickPad. 2 separate words, regular spelling. It's a very fluent acrylic influenced notepad taking app, and it's free. I think it's still free. And it's really nice. Yeah, so if you like using Notepad and WordPad and all that kind of stuff, try this one. It's very modern looking.
Do you think rounded corners will suit Windows 10? Sure. I mean, as long as it's consistent, anything will suit.
I'm embracing rounded corners.
I tell you why they're moving to rounded corners. It's because squared off corners don't look finished. That's why. Rounded corners are like you put effort in. It's like, oh, that's an actual design choice. Yeah. Whereas squared corners just looks like the default.
But it's like even this phone is rounded corners. I just like it better. Corners. Yeah.
Even the Galaxy Note 10, although it is
and I even
square.
Set the search because with Microsoft Launcher, the search bar you can customize it and choose rounded corners.
Oh yeah, I do the same. I have rounded corners on mine as well. Right, so a couple more questions. Does Microsoft there's anything similar to Apple's Metal? What's Metal again? I've forgotten. Remind me what Apple's Metal is and I'll answer.
It has something to do with the drivers for video cards or something like that.
If so, then no. I don't think so.
It's a low overhead, hardware accelerated 3D graphic and compute shader application programming interface developed by Apple.
I'm going to say I don't know. That's my answer.
Metal combines functions similar to OpenGL and OpenCL under one API.
Maybe DirectX?
Yeah, I think DirectX is probably...
When will the Windows Central app have rounded... Dan, why haven't we killed the Windows Central app yet?
Yeah, so... I've been...
We're trying to get it killed. We might as well kill it.
It offers some of the performance benefits of similar APIs in other platforms such as Vulkan and DirectX 12. So there you go. Metal is basically DirectX 12, but for Macs. Yeah, for our app, I was supposed to follow up with that open source, that community that's been building all the new UWP apps, and maybe I'll just put Zach in charge of that because I'm traveling too much. I can barely keep my own life in order.
Well,
I did go to the eye doctor though yesterday.
The eye doctor? Wow.
Yeah. It's been 3 years since my last appointment, and that was the first appointment in like 10 years, so getting better. Still haven't been to an actual doctor yet in 20 years, so I need to go get a physical because I could be totally dying right now. See, this is why I don't have time to fix your app.
It's our app, but okay.
Well, I meant, yeah, never mind. Yeah, if you want to be in charge, I'll put you in charge of it because...
No, I'm not. I'm not a developer. Maybe we should just open source it.
You don't have to develop it. No. What we're going to do was we're part of the Discord with those developers who made all the recent UWPs that we announced in June, like this new Spotify app and everything like that.
Oh yeah,
And,
yeah.
and, and we were going to try to get, and some of those developers were interested in helping us out. So
If we just release the open source, just open source it, then anyone can just make a
either
good
way, we
one.
have like five,
Well,
and
no,
then
then we
essentially
choose the best one and then put it in the store. I don't know. Maybe I don't. Yeah, you have to introduce me to that group because I don't know about it.
yeah.
Man, we're getting a lot of Trump supporters in the YouTube chat today. Did Trump make a tweet about American companies or something?
I didn't see anything about that. I mean, where do you see?
I've actually hidden quite a few blocked quite a few YouTube commenters today.
Oh,
One of them saying, "When will Microsoft be American again?" Because I'm guessing they source all their stuff in China.
okay, yeah. No, Trump hereby ordered
Oh,
U.S. companies in China to bring back manufacturing to the United States, which is something a fascist would say, not a capitalist, because capitalists don't dictate markets for companies and where they should be. But if you're a hardcore nationalist and fascist, you probably embrace that idea. It's dumb because there's a reason why everybody went to China for manufacturing, which is, I mean, Apple even said that they can't do the new Mac Pro in China, or sorry, and they were doing it in Texas, but they're moving it to China because of one reason was screws. The fact is, in China, when you need screws, like there's just like you gotta see these buildings, they're like huge, and they can get any part custom made instantly in huge bulk. Like they said, the problem with their factory in Texas was they couldn't get the right screws made in time to keep up with production, and it's just like it's stuff like that. It's just sorry, U.S. manufacturing, it's gone. It's not coming back. Like not it's not going to come back, especially when the price is so high for labor here in the United States. And China is going to face this too. As big as China is right now, it goes down. China's already starting to lose some of its manufacturing to other countries too. I mean, this is the downward spiral of manufacturing. Um, some would call it trickle down economics. Others would call it. I mean, listen, I protested this stuff. I was in year 2001. I was in Quebec, Canada, fighting against the FTAA and getting tear gassed by cops, fighting against free trade agreements. I don't know where you conservative and Republican people were, but you weren't on our side. You were actually fighting against us. So you can all go to hell as far as I'm concerned. Just because you're waking up now and realizing free trade actually isn't that great for the American economy, I think you're all a bunch of assholes. So there.
all right. And with that,
See what you did, Zach?
I'm sorry. I just wanted to know about the latest in politics. I shouldn't have asked. No, I'm kidding. Right. Is there any more questions? Otherwise, we're gonna go. 'Cause we are running over time anyway, since the podcast went on for an extra 30 minutes. Someone's asking what. Well, I missed it now. What good smartwatch? What smartwatch do you recommend right now? Not including the Apple Watch, obviously.
The Fossil is beautiful hardware. I think and everybody kind of, as far as I can tell, the consensus is if you want Android Wear and you want a smartwatch, the Fossil watches are sort of like the best out there that aren't like some kind of hardcore specific niche, sport or fishing, sailing watch. And then there's Tizen, which I can't speak to yet.
Did you find out if Huawei is going to release that Snapdragon tablet outside of China?
Oh, yeah. What about it?
Are they going to sell it outside of China?
No, I don't think so.
Not too
In fact, the one I had is sold with the Windows 10 Home single language
so it's Chinese. Yeah.
So I had to upgrade it to Pro just to get it to English. Mm-hmm. I don't think they're going to sell it outside just because a couple of reasons, right? The Snapdragon market is still pretty small, and I don't think it makes sense too. You have a very similar device to Samsung's Galaxy Book 2, which I got to follow up on. There's been some issues with that one recently. But in terms of form factor, it's very similar. The difference is Samsung, you're going to get, an AMOLED display, which is really nice, versus a really nice LCD. The benefit to Huawei is their device is like $200 cheaper and comes with 8 gigs of RAM versus 4 and double the internal storage. So there's definitely a value savings that made the MateBook E is what we're talking about. It's a pretty nice device. I don't love everything about it. I don't like the folding kickstand thing. Like it's pretty good, but I would have done some things differently. It's still better than the original MateBook. It's not as good as the NVX2 that came out a couple years ago with the Snapdragon 835, which I absolutely adored. But it's a pretty solid device. The actual hardware, the actual tablet part's beautiful. Really good audio, really good display. So I'm going to review this, obviously, probably in the coming week, something like that. Zach, I'll bring it with me to Germany. You can check it out.
Nice. Yeah,
But
I'm hoping to get hold of the new Galaxy Arm.
right.
Laptop.
Yeah, the Galaxy.
I'll have to import it because obviously they're not going to sell it in the
Yeah.
UK.
That's gonna be a fun device. I'm curious about holding it, how thin and light it is. Downside
Hopefully
is
it's IFA
it's a
as
straight
well.
up laptop, right? So
Which I don't mind. I'm not too about that. Someone else asked, do you think Microsoft will refresh all the old icons before switching to or releasing the new start menu? I would be surprised if they haven't done it for at least all the modern apps. I think the plan is to update all the modern apps with a new sort of fluent designy icon that sort of the Office apps already have. But yeah, I'd be surprised if they don't update the modern apps at least to that new design. Okay, I think that's enough for today. Thank you guys for watching and stuff. We will be back. We're back next week, won't we, Dan? 30th, if you're not flying or something.
yeah, I'll be here probably.
Yeah, cool. We'll be back next week as normal. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and we shall see you next time. Bye-bye.